we have Blake from Boom Supersonic in the studio. Welcome to the show, Blake. It's been too long.
We've been wanting to do this for a while.
Yeah. Ideally from a supersonic plane. We're aviation aficionados. We like traveling. But the hard thing with the show is that it takes us 6 hours to get across the country. We podcast for 3 hours a day. The math just doesn't make sense. So we're happy that you're working on a solution for us.
Indeed. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, it will be fun to do the first ever supersonic webcast. Maybe we should just agree to do that.
I'm 100% on board.
Let's do it.
Count me in. Can you give us just the general update? Obviously, explain like what you're building, but what's the latest news in the world of Boom Supersonic?
Yeah, well, I think for anybody who's not been following the story, the goal is to really pick up where Concorde left off, foment a supersonic renaissance, ultimately deliver faster travel for everybody from the president on down to every family. Mm-hmm. And so it's a decades-long mission, ultimately to replace subsonic with supersonic for every passenger on every route. But building companies like Boom it's like building an iceberg from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And I feel like this year is the year that the iceberg is like really emerged from the surface of the water. Yeah. In January, we broke the sound barrier with our test airplane, the XB-1.
Broken the sound barrier. We love to see it.
Right. And then in February, we did it again. And arguably, we broke it permanently.
Double kill.
Fantastic. That's great news.
Oh, you
said you broke it permanently? Is that what you said?
Yes, because we proved we could do it reliably with no audible sonic boom.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
They said it couldn't be done. They said it couldn't be done.
Yeah,
you didn't believe them.
By the way, it turns out that like people have been telling me this for decades, and
boomless
mostly the
cruise.
claims are it's like really hard, and you have to like change the aerodynamics of the airplane and da-da-da-da. No, it's a software fix.
Really? How? Well, explain that.
Everything is computer, John. That's
Everything is computer.
If you fly the airplane at the right altitude, at the right speed for the current atmosphere, the boom makes a U-turn in the sky and never touches the ground.
No way.
That's so
but you
amazing.
need to be able to calculate that.
That's right.
In real time.
You need
and
like
adjust.
decently good weather data.
Yes.
And ironically,
sensors,
algorithms that were developed for computer gaming.
Wow. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So it's a physics simulation.
It's ray tracing.
You're running Unreal Engine, almost. I'm sure you have a proprietary system. What does that need to go through FAA approval to use that, or is that separate from the rest of the aircraft what's it called? Qualification or like approval?
Yeah, so you need to certify an airplane to carry passengers.
Yeah.
Basically, you got to prove you meet all the safety standards.
Yeah.
And this is separate because we have one of the dumbest regulations ever created. In 1973, we banned supersonic flight in the U.S. Like literally, there's a regulation that says thou shalt not exceed Mach 1.
Yeah, and it's speed limit, not sound limit, right?
Right. It's really stupid. It's really stupid. And so we could like make it play Mozart when it flies over, and you're still not allowed to do it. And that's why those coast to coast flights are still stuck at 6 hours. That's why no one's done this already. And so we're working really hard to get that changed. We had a bill
like
that
something that like the EO would just drop, and it would be like, oh my God, he just tweeted it out or put it on Truth Social, and it happened. Like, love him or hate him, but like the guy definitely like likes to rip a crazy idea on short notice for everyone. Are you optimistic that there will be change? Does this need to go through the House and Senate, or is this something that could just happen in EO?
So we've had good conversations at FAA.
Sure.
This week, a bipartisan bill dropped in the House and the Senate that does it.
Cool.
And Elon endorsed it. Jared Isaacman endorsed it. We've got bipartisan support.
Great.
Some people think this could get through the Senate unanimously. I think that's probably a little ambitious, but even the idea that that's possible, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, some lawmakers like traveling slower because it inspires them to grind harder. More time on the plane, more time to prep. They're filibusters. They don't want to go fast.
I guess
that's right.
The bear case for supersonic
fast
flight
planes
is
scare
that
me.
I get so much email done.
I do get a lot of email done on a 6 hour
and
flight.
if I got there faster, I'd do less email.
I was texting Jordy when we were flying to DC. I was like, this is incredible. I've never been more productive. But
I think faster flights will just force us all to be more efficient with our time, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But I mean, break down the actual scope of the problem here? How much is engineering? How much is regulatory? How are you staffing against that? Do you have a massive government affairs team and lobbyists? Or I imagine there's still a ton of engineers on the, you're not just taking some like white labeled plane and then doing a bunch of lobbying and that's the end game, right?
Yeah. I mean, the most surprising thing is that we don't have to invent anything fundamentally new. This is not a science project. It's not a technology project. It's really just an engineering project.
Sure.
In fact, we're taking 20-year-old 787 technology, basically reshaping the airplane, making it long and skinny, putting twice as many engines. And so there's a lot of engineering and testing that goes into that, but there's no science and there's no new technology. And there's only one regulation that needs to change.
Just the speed limit.
So we've got small numbers of great engineers. I'm a big believer in like tiny teams that are very focused. Like we built XB1, our test supersonic jet, with just 50 people.
50 people, wow.
50
and
people,
the overall company's not that much bigger, right?
Right, we're like 115 now,
115,
and like we're
wow.
growing very slowly. Like if a team does not complain about being understaffed, I know they're overstaffed.
Yeah. I mean, we were joking about like white labeling a plane. Obviously, you are standing on the shoulders of giants using some off-the-shelf technology, using some technology licensed from other firms. Can you take me through the journey of engine development, the decisions that you made? Have you changed course on any of those decisions? What would you recommend to the next generation of aircraft builders?
Yeah, well, I'll go broader than that.
Please.
Like if you're thinking about doing hardware at all, my advice, or frankly, any startup, all startups are hard. I don't think any are easy. I think the difficulty level is set by founders because we tend to run at our own red line. And if somehow it gets easier, we'll just make the job harder again. Like Brian, Brian just decided to double what Airbnb is, because I guess the old thing got too easy. And so what I've found along the way is I'm far more successful if I pick a mission that deeply inspires me and makes it worth being at my red line. So I never get up in the morning and think, is it worth it? Okay, great. So now probably building supersonic jets is like, the ultimate hard mode. But what I have found along the way is people around the company from the legacy industry will have all these stories about all these things that are impossible to do. You can't build your own jet engine. Like only a big company can do that. There's tons of proprietary technology, blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Like I'll tell you one story. Like we were trying to get high temperature super alloys for our engine. And, we thought we needed to go license it from one of the big three. We get into this licensing conversation and they're like, oh, we can't give you this thing because there's a trade secret. I'm like, don't tell me the trade secret. I'll give you the part. Just make me the part and hand me the parts back and don't tell me the secret. And they said, no, you'll find the secret. So we can't do that. And for like 2 weeks, we're like, oh shit, like how do we ever get this engine built? But eventually we just went into the supply chain and we found the trade secret.
We found it.
And I'll tell you the trade secret.
Okay.
There is no trade secret.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
The thing that was theoretically proprietary is an open source material developed by NASA where all the specs are public.
Well, the trade secret is that they're using open source.
Yeah, that was the trade secret.
That's the trade secret.
The trade secret was there is no trade secret. Yes. And because there's all this fake proprietary. So everybody's telling you why you have to work with them, why you have to use their stuff, why you couldn't create it yourself. And it just 9 times out of 10, it's just not true. And so we found, we probably heard Elon talk about the idiot index, which is like how much a finished part cost is divided by the raw materials cost. We found a thing that's more important. It's called the slacker index. Slacker index is how long it takes to get something divided by how long it takes to actually make it.
Wow.
And so we've got these turbine blades. We're 3D printing turbine blades for our engine. And we go quote it out of the traditional aerospace supply chain. It's going to cost $1 million for one engine's worth of parts, and it's going to take 6 months. I was like, well, how long does it take to print a blade? Well, it's like actually about 24 hours. So why does it take 6 months to get one? Well, they were like printing them like one at a time, and then you got to wait for your turn on the machine, all this not. Okay, what's the machine cost? $2 million. How long does it take to get a machine? Oh, actually, they've got them in inventory. You get them in a couple weeks. So for the price of 2 engines worth of blades, we got the 3D printers and the blades, and we could and we beat the lead time of just outsourcing it.
Wow.
And that pattern exists everywhere in this business.
Can you talk
That's super
about the
fascinating.
current fundraising market for hard tech companies? There's a bunch of companies raising a ton of money. It's feast and famine out there.
Yeah.
The F-35 cost $1 trillion. Somehow I feel like $1 trillion raise is on the table soon based on the current market.
We'd personally like to see
we'd
you
like
do
to
1T on 5T.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that.
1T on 5T.
That should be the new goal.
But I mean, there is a world where a plane company comes out and raises just massive money and just dumps it all into subcontractors and takes a very different approach. Why wouldn't that work? And what advice would you give to the next generation of hard tech founders in aviation or otherwise?
Yeah. So the key difference, so there's this mythology that hardware companies are more capital intensive. And if you go look at like how much money did Uber raise, how much did Lyft raise, how much did Stripe raise, how much did Airbnb raise, like these like theoretically capital light businesses consumed billions in venture capital.
Yep.
Before IPO. So wait, what? And then if you go look at like SpaceX or Anduril, like the theoretically hard tech companies, like oftentimes they raise less money. So WTF? And I think that the difference is if you are building, say, Uber or Airbnb, you have an idea that sounds really counterintuitive, like invite strangers from the internet to sleep on your couch, right? It doesn't sound like a good idea, but it's actually really cheap to test.
Yeah.
And so what happens in most internet businesses is very small amounts of capital allow you to test whether you have product market fit. And you test it by means of building and shipping the product. We can't build a supersonic airliner as a means to testing whether anybody wants a supersonic airliner, right? So what you have to do in a hardware business is find a capital light way to demonstrate that you're at product market fit, and the answer can't be shipping the product. So our strategy was pre-orders.
Yep.
So we got United, American to make like deposits, like non-refundable deposits on airplanes against a specific design. So it's not just like, okay, here's $1 that says, supersonic is cool. It's like, nope, here's a significant multi-million-dollar deposit, a whole further deposit schedule against a very specific airplane with very specific specs. And then so we can go to investors and say, if we build this, there's obviously a gigantic market, and this is going to be like
We're already
1,000x
getting paid
money.
for it. You guys are
Right.
already getting paid for it.
That's
one way or
right.
another.
Yeah. So all you have to believe is we'll actually ship the product.
What was I want to ask you, what was the worst week building Boom, and what was the best week? I'm guessing the best week was this year.
Yeah, I think I'll give you the best moment. The best moment was the day that we broke the sound barrier for the first time. But it wasn't actually the moment of breaking the sound barrier, because we'd done so much testing at that point. I knew if we flew that day, we were going to break the sound barrier. What I didn't know is whether we'd have the weather to do it. And like I'd gotten up that morning and it was extra cloudy, and like we can't do it on a cloudy day. And so the team was kind of debriefing, checking the weather, and one of our safety culture rules is like no top management are in the safety briefs. It's the team making an independent go no go decision with nobody senior putting their thumb in the scale and telling them they need to go and pressurizing it. But so the team, I'm like in the hangar waiting, and the team walks out, and I could just tell from the energy, like it was go time. Like nobody had to say anything. It's just like I see them walking over the airplane. They're like hooking it up to hooking the tow bars up, like we're good to go. And at that moment, I really teared up because I knew it was going to happen. And then like when it actually happened, and everybody was jumping up and down and screaming, and I was sort of like, yeah, of course. Yeah. So that was I think that was the best moment. The worst moment, we have near-death experiences like basically every year. And at this point, I just expect it. I'm like, okay, every year we're going to get the startup equivalent of a cancer diagnosis. And, if I'm lucky, it's stage 2, not stage 4. But, we've had like some, like we like survived stage 4 startup cancer. Yeah. We had an extremely difficult fundraise. I think we got down to a week of cash.
Wow.
Like the lawyers had a plan to shut the company down. I remember calling one of our investors when we were sort of 3 weeks away And he's like, usually when people tell me you're 3 weeks away, you're telling me you're going to shut the company down. And I was like, of course we're not shutting the company down. We're talking about how we're get through this little knothole here. Like,
There
I
are
just,
people who have like 12 months of cash and they're like, I'm out of this. I've been doing this for a year. I'm going to go be a PM in big tech.
I've done the PM at big tech. I don't ever want to do that again.
No, I think
I'll
that- I
never
think
go
the thing-
back. You could never make me go back.
No,
I can't go back.
The thing for you and your team, and I'm sure the entire cap table, it's like, if we don't do this, we have to be, if we're not successful here, we're going to be reminded multiple times a year,
Every time we
potentially
take off our
multiple times.
shoes.
Yeah, every time you get on a plane, every time it like is one of the very few companies on earth that can bend reality into an, bend time, right? And I just think I feel like humanity is fortunate that you are running this company, because so many people would have gotten the stage 4 diagnosis and just said, all right, like we took a good shot, we did our best, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, it's my biggest wish for other founders is pick the startup where if you got the stage 4 diagnosis, you say, screw it, we're beating this. And that's for me, that's supersonic flight, but for every founder, it's something different. But I think there's this founder market thing, and if or founder mission thing, and if you get that really in alignment, then then you can run through brick walls.
Yeah. In many ways,
I would run through brick walls for a note-taking app.
I would too. In many ways, you could think of Boom as being a very logical, obvious next step in commercial aviation, long haul travel, that type of thing.
Yeah.
What about the flying car market? I've often said we have flying cars, they're just helicopters. But the problem with helicopters is that they're not evenly distributed. Not everyone has a helicopter, but if everyone had a helicopter on their house, they could fly to work. And yeah, you need air traffic control and stuff. We all need to be good pilots, but if a company could drop the cost of a helicopter by 100x and make it 100x safer, we'd probably basically say, yeah, we solve flying cars. And yet that hasn't happened. So what is your take on the boom of helicopters, or the boom of flying cars, or anything else in aviation?
There are great people working on that, actually.
Yeah.
And it's actually way harder than supersonic flight. Way harder.
Why?
But because... a zillion reasons. Like, one is you need a whole new set of regulations, right? Because the electric vertical takeoff and landing. So like Joby and Archer, who are really the two leaders in this. It's not technically or regulatorily a helicopter. So there's a whole new set of rules. Then you need a whole new set of infrastructure.
But is that a mistake? Well, what I'm saying is what if I started a flying car company that was perfectly regulated as a helicopter? Just like there are these companies now that are regulated as sea gliders. Billy Thalmer from Region,
Billy and
right?
Region are doing great work.
Yeah, it's like legally a boat, right?
Them.
Yeah, I'm sure you love it, right? It's like legally a boat, but it's like a plane, but he's designated in one way, so it's a lot easier. And I feel like there's almost like this regulatory arbitrage, or regulatory hack that the hard tech founders might need to think through.
So if the regulations were done well, your idea would be exactly on point. The problem is we have too many regulations that are prescriptive about exactly how something has to be done, rather than setting a safety bar or a noise bar, right? And so like if you look at the regulations for helicopters, they tell you how you must build your helicopter.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if you want to build an electric helicopter with distributed rotors, well, it doesn't have the parts that the regulations tell you how to design.
That makes sense.
Or like how do you treat, or that you're allowed to have like a wing on the thing too. So that like the better helicopter doesn't fit the regulations for helicopters.
Yep. It'd almost be better to just
bug in the regulations.
Yeah, almost just to regulate against like if flying things are crashing at a rate above more than like 1 in a billion, it's no go. Doesn't matter how you build it. Instead of saying you have to have this screw in this place. Right?
That's right. And for large transport aircraft, it's actually a bit better.
Yeah.
1 in a billion is actually the regulatory safety bar.
Yeah.
And there are also still some things that are like prescriptive, but there's a mechanism to get around the prescription called equivalent level of safety. So we can go to FAA and say, like you say that our throttle has to be built in such and such and such a way, but the real thing is a reliable throttle. Let me show you my reliable throttle that's done differently, and then you can get an equivalent level of safety fine and you can go forwards. But if you look at like going from a helicopter to an electric vertical takeoff and landing, or flying car, like the whole thing is different.
What's your timeline to eVTOLs being in American skies?
Who wins? Who goes first? Will I be on a boom supersonic or a eVTOL?
Yeah, I mean,
flying car
just kind of a wild guess. Is it
yeah.
before 2030? Seems unlikely to me. Is it? Is it 2040? Is it?
I don't. I feel uncomfortable speaking for other people's timelines.
Yeah, that's
I think the technology is going to be ready, but before the infrastructure and the regulatory environment are laid flat.
Yeah.
And the stated timelines for eVTOL are like super near term.
Yeah.
But I suspect it's optimistic. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe we've made the mistake of being more realistic, and now it just sounds worse. So our timeline is 2029 for being ready for the first passenger.
I mean, there's also like incredible things happening in eVTOL that are unmanned. You look at what Zipline's doing. We talked to the founder of Zipline, and we were blown away by the progress there. And that was one of the things where they had to go to another country to get favorable regulatory treatment and kind of figure things out, but then have really been able to accelerate.
Yeah, I mean, Keller's crushing it. I love Zipline.
It's crazy.
Great, amazing founder, amazing company, great success story for how you do these things. They're brilliant. Keller is brilliant at like finding the first market. That was like the soft target. The small and uncrewed are radically easier than large and crewed. And the reason for both is safety. If you go big, even if it's uncrewed, you have a problem because if the thing crashes, it can hurt somebody on the ground. Right. And so there's a threshold, somewhere around, I think, 55 pounds, like above which, like, it's radically harder. And then if you put a human on board, like, obviously, you don't want to hurt anybody. And so in building XB1, like the most surprising things were about the sort of the second order effect of our choice to put a human on board from day one and not to have an ejection seat. Like we basically put everything on hard mode, but we learned a lot more from that.
Yeah. Is there an easy mode version of the boom story where you go to some country with lax regulations, you say, we're going uncrewed, we're going smaller, maybe it's like a ISR reconnaissance application, you're only flying over the water, counting on fish or whales or something, and it's just much easier to actually get flying on a routine start the flywheel like Zipline did? Have you thought about that?
Could go, like there are people doing kind of what you're describing that I think are smart, like Hermeus. Hermeus is smart.
Yeah, totally.
And but what is Hermeus doing? They're basically building a hypersonic bomber. And it's kind of okay if the trips were one way.
Sure.
And this, I think they'll have a great business, and they're great people working on that. And I'm cheering for them. They'll probably get to Mach 5 long before I get to Mach 5. But doing that and then later putting a human on board is extremely difficult. Like if you look at the history of development of aircraft platforms, you find that defense technology makes it into commercial technology, but there are basically 0 cases of a defense product becoming a commercial product. But the reverse is not true. There are many cases of commercial products becoming defense products. So the Boeing 707 became the KC-135. The 767 became the KC-46. The 737 is turned into a whole bunch of command and control airplanes and anti-submarine airplanes. I think the reason is when you're commercial, you have to worry about safety and you have to worry about noise. And neither of those things is retrofittable. They're actually foundational to product architecture. And so technology can go in either direction, but products go in one direction because safety and noise are fundamental to product architecture.
You mentioned AJ at Hermias. When are we going to see the foot race? I want the two founders of the supersonic companies to race each other to see who's faster in the real world on the ground, and then we'll race the planes in the sky.
I mean, I think AJ and I have been telling each other the other one's going to win the race. So I don't know. I think it'd be like the most, at least for me, it would be like the most pathetic race ever. I'm like, I am like not a runner at all.
Well,
we'll do it as a pay-per-view. We'll raise some non-dilutive capital. You guys can maybe split it based on.
Let's actually make it a little bit less about the running. Let's just do the Murph.
Yeah,
we'll just do the Anderl Murph together.
Anyway. We're gonna hold you to being the first people to podcast Supersonic.
Yep,
and I would love to have you back on the show many times between now and then, because this conversation has been extremely insightful, and we are just grateful for the work that you and the team do.
It's great. Thank you so much, Blake.
That was so much fun. Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.